So we have the Amy Coney Barrett hearings. The whole thing is a sham. We shouldn't be having the hearings. They blocked Merrick Garland for an insanely long time period. This would be nothing compared to the obstruction of Merrick Garland. I don't know why the Democrats are taking this seriously, but they're going to get steamrolled. She's probably going to get on the court. It's going to be miserable. 6-3 conservative court. Any left-wing ideas are going to be slapped down by the court. A lot of pain and suffering to look forward to, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we have. But, however, having said all that, in this hearing, Sheldon Whitehouse really did a great job laying out what's basically the far-right corruption network that has led to certain judges being favored and being put on the courts. So he's going to lay it all out for you. The network of dark money and corruption that leads to these judges becoming prominent. And he really hits the nail on the head here.
This is to me, pretty big deal. I've never seen this around any court that I've ever been involved with, where there's this much dark money and this much influence being used. Here's how the Washington Post summed it up. This is a conservative activist behind-the-scenes campaign to remake the nation's courts, and it's a $250 million dark money operation. $250 million is a lot of money to spend if you're not getting anything for it. So that raises the question, what are they getting for it? Well, I showed the slide earlier on the Affordable Care Act and on Obergefell and on Roe versus Wade. That's where they lost. But with another judge, that could change. That's where the contest is. That's where the Republican Party platform tells us to look at how they want judges to rule, to reverse Roe, to reverse the Obamacare cases, and to reverse Obergefell and take away gay marriage. That is their stated objective and plan. Why not take them at their word? But there's another piece of it, and that is not what's ahead of us, but what's behind us. What's behind us is now 80 cases, Mr. Chairman, 80 cases under Chief Justice Roberts that have these characteristics. One, they were decided 5-4 by a bare majority. Two, the 5-4 majority was partisan in the sense that not one Democratic appointee joined the five. I refer to that group as the Roberts Five. It changes a little bit, as with Justice Scalia's death, for instance, but there's been a steady Roberts Five that has delivered now 80 of these decisions. And the last characteristic of them is that there is an identifiable Republican donor interest in those cases. And in every single case, that donor interest won. It was an 80-0, 5-4 partisan rout, ransacking. And it's important to look at where those cases went, because they're not about big public issues like getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, undoing Roe versus Wade, and undoing same-sex marriage. They're about power. And if you look at those 80 decisions, they fall into four categories over and over and over again. One, unlimited and dark money in politics. Citizens United is the famous one, but it's continued since with McCutcheon, and we've got one coming up now. Always the five for unlimited money in politics, never protecting against dark money in politics, despite the fact that they said it was going to be transparent. And who wins when you allow unlimited dark money in politics? A very small group. The ones who have unlimited money to spend and a motive to spend it in politics. They win, everybody else loses. And if you're looking at who might be behind this, let's talk about people with unlimited money to spend and a motive to do it.
The other things he went on to list, weaken the jury, because juries are harder to corrupt. It's illegal to try to corrupt a jury. So these right-wing judges want to weaken juries, and weaken regulatory agencies. And that's the other one. And then voter suppression. So they side with whoever's suppressing the votes in these red states. So like they'll uphold whatever kind of barriers are being put in place to make it harder for people to vote. So listen, he's right. And what he's really demonstrating here is the same way that we think of Congress as basically being totally bought and owned by billionaires and corporations, that the judges, it's pretty much the same thing. You have these right-wing judicial groups, and they pump out these judges who have the ideology that they're looking for. Socially backwards, but beyond the socially backward stuff, incredibly corporatist, always on the side of big business interests. And, again, you see it in these decisions. David Sirota was just tweeting about this the other day, and he's correct. The idea of originalism or textualism, like, oh, we just go by the letter of the Constitution, us conservative judges, that's all we do. We never let our opinion get involved. That's total nonsense. And judicial activism can be seen in virtually all the decisions when it comes to corruption. The idea that money equals free speech, that's not in the Constitution. That's not in there at all. That's their interpretation of it. Because they're trying to find a way to justify and rationalize the immense corruption of our politics, because they're also representing the industries. And they said in one of the decisions, I think it was Citizens United, the money isn't corruption, and it isn't even the appearance of corruption. Really? Really? So when corporations or billionaires give a tremendous amount of money to politicians, that's not even the appearance of corruption? Not even the appearance of it. Absurd. So anyway, they do judicial activism, because everybody does judicial activism, because everything is political. It's inherently political. So you can't make these decisions and then act like, no, when I make the decision, it's above the fray, and I'm just going by the Constitution. When the Democrats and the left-leaning judges make decisions, oh, they're activist judges. No, they're all, to one extent or another, believers in the living document theory of the Constitution, and they're all activist judges. But what he's pointing out here, and he's correctly pointing it out, is there's a network, these right-wing, very highly funded and influential right-wing judicial groups, and they are pumping out basically these corrupt judges who work backwards from their conclusion, who will always side with corporate interests. The best example for Amy Coney Barrett is how she screwed workers out of overtime pay. Screwed workers out of overtime pay by redirecting them. They were suing to get back funds. She redirected them, no, you got to go to private arbitration. You can't go to the court system. And of course, arbitration sides with management. So she's screwing workers out of overtime pay. Because this is what she was put there to do. She was put there to always side with corporations. Now, he did a great job exposing this. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people at this hearing, and I've already seen it, who don't keep their eye on the ball, they don't focus on the important issues, and they end up looking ridiculous. So credit to Sheldon Whitehouse here. Don't get it twisted. The right-wing judicial groups pumping out these judges are just as corrupt as the politicians, okay? It's not like the judicial branch is a holier-than-thou branch that's above corruption. It's subject to the same kind of nefarious forces that control Congress, that control the president. Corporations and billionaires always find a way to get their influence out there. And now it looks like they own the courts.